Reijo Oksanen here again. It is time to read the next chapter of my book. I actually started last time from the beginning and then went on to all kinds of other things. But I'll come back to the second little chapter from the book, the one work, which I hope one day will also be published. We don't know. The name of this chapter is Visiting Another World. It may seem strange that I talk about another world. I used to call it living in another world. But I found out that it is much more appropriate to call it visiting another world because I don't live in that world. It was a change in me, not in the world, but I was in, so to say, I was in another world at that time. This took place in 1963 when I was visiting a place called Lohja for the weekend, visiting a friend at that place, and I was then walking towards the bus stop in Lohja with meetings with remarkable men tucked under my arm. I had bought the book a few days earlier in the academic bookshop in Helsinki, which I used to visit fairly regularly at that time, searching for books. Somehow this book has very much to do with what actually happened on this visit. But I cannot explain it. Studied it, but I must say that Meetings with Remarkable Men is the closest book to me because it is so alive in a different way from In Search of the Miraculous or the other books that Gurdjieff himself wrote. I personally think that it has got a lot more emotional content than Beelzebub's Tales or Life is Only Real When I Am. They don't make me feel the same way. I can remember then later in London when I had really gone into Meetings with Remarkable Men in a big way. I had translated the book also into Finnish. Unfortunately, I lost the translation later, so it could never be used for anything else than an exercise for myself. But Meetings has something very special. When the film came out, and we had a big do in London in the Gurdjieff Society at the time, and I was invited, and Madame de Salzman was there, and all the important people, my group leader, Sam Copley. I was really disappointed. Although it's not a film badly made, but it doesn't have the contents that I had in my heart about the book. So, back to Lohja, this little town. The weather was very nice, sunny. Fairly early in the morning I started proceeding towards the bus stop, which was not more than about a kilometer away from where I was staying. Big trees lined this road. It was all green, and through the leaves one could see the blue sky sun shining, birds singing. I could have sung, maybe, but I didn't. I can still now see in my mind the movements of the leaves in the wind, slight wind that there was there. I walked towards the bus stop to take the bus back to Helsinki, where I was living at the time. So I felt good, particularly good, with the meetings stuck under my arm. And I came to the bus station, which is a big open square, and people were walking across the square. And I looked at them and I couldn't really understand. It looked like they were not moving themselves, that they were as if pulled by a force, unknown, unseen, which made them move, trying to fit their steps to the pull that they had experienced. That's how I interpreted it. It looked really fantastic. I watched it for a few minutes before I proceeded to walk across the big square to the bus. Everything had changed and got completely different when I came to the square, and as I was walking towards the bus I was taking, I saw people moving like this. This was something much more powerful than what there was in themselves. That they were obviously not at all aware, but at this moment I could see it. It looked like the movements of the body was something that people themselves could definitely not have achieved. It was coming from somewhere. They weren't using their own energy. Their energy went all into that they tried to fit their steps to this pull that there was there. And the people themselves looked to me then lifeless. It was shocking to me to see this. I couldn't understand what was happening. And I was definitely not in my normal state of being, which of course one would say is a form of sleep, and this maybe was then a short time of awakening from that sleep. On top of that, one of those walking with the power of an unknown force would have, a woman would have collided with me if I had not stepped aside. And this is such a typical thing that when she was proceeding with this force forwards and fitting her steps to the pull, she could not possibly have considered that possible collision. I stepped aside. She didn't even blink. Didn't thank me, say hello, or as all polite people should be saying to each other anyway, wherever they are. It's a nice Swiss custom. Grüezi, they say. I came to the side of the bus and asked the conductress, "Is this bus going to Helsinki?" She didn't look at me, and she spoke to my left side, about 1 meter, and answered, yes, it is going to Helsinki. She did not really reply my question. There was definitely no contact between us. I tried to be open to whatever contact there could be from her, but it wasn't there. She was actually, in my interpretation, just as absent from this moment as the people on the square. Now, I'm quite naturally using some of the words that we use in the Gurdjieff work in this, because they are so exact. So I apologize if it disturbs you, but if you find other words and would like to describe a similar kind of experience, I would be very interested in hearing it. I stepped into the bus, found a seat quickly by a window on the side of the open square, and by the time I then looked out once more, I found out the same movements happening, people walking in this way, and I had to close my eyes and try to calm down and find the usual state of being that I normally am in. I have tried to interpret this experience and find explanations for it in the literature, and in the Gurdjieff literature there are some things, not so many. I found a similarity in the book by C. Daley King, an American, who wrote a book called The States of Human Consciousness. He tells of his own practice of trying to practice self-remembering. He usually did it also when he was going on a journey, usually a railway station, which is a very interesting parallel to the experiences I've had. He tells that these kind of experiences happen mostly when we're going on a journey. And his was based, in his own view, entirely on the practice of self-remembering, the efforts that he made in arriving to the state of being called self-remembering or self-consciousness. Of course, there are other things told about this kind of experience, and one of them is Peter Demianovich Ouspensky, in his fragments talks about sleeping people that he saw when he was walking the main street of St. Petersburg, which is called the Nevsky Prospect. I'm fairly sure that he had something similar in mind. I have worked on Nevsky Prospect, remembering what Ouspensky had experienced, and I never really remembered myself there either. I certainly did not do anything to get into the state. I simply felt very good, very alive. It would be interesting to hear if any of the people who look at this video have had similar experiences, and you're welcome to contact me if you have or if you haven't. Thank you for listening.